Check it out.
Journalism, a program for the people, is a study dedicated to storytelling and pursuing the truth. Welcome to Where You At, a podcast where we take you inside the work of alumni for the School of Journalism and Media Studies at San Diego State University. Our goal, to show you the success of our alumni, inspire students with the stories, and connect students and alumni on the path of journalism and success. Now, here's your host, me, Rami Alarian.
Hello, listeners. I am so happy to be here today. As always, we have a very special guest straight from Camp Pendleton. We have Mark McDonough, the Director of Communication Strategy and Operations for that site. McDonough is a public affairs officer for the Marines and specializes in crisis communication, media relations, and a whole lot more we're going to talk about. How are you feeling, Mark?
I'm feeling good, man. It's great to be here. I'm always happy to talk about my job in the Marine Corps in general, and especially SDSU and the program there. So, very excited.
Sweet. Now, the question I always like, just no breaks, just going into, how was your time at SDSU?
My time at SDSU was pretty fantastic. So, as a Marine Comm Strat officer, communication strategy and operations, that's how the Marine Corps uses different language for everything, and that's how we say public affairs in the Marine Corps. We have this pretty interesting program called the Commandant's Career Level Education Board. And so, when you're a young company grade officer, maybe a lieutenant, you get screened, and they determine whether you go to another level of professional training, or maybe you go get a grad degree somewhere, whether it's the Naval Postgraduate School or some other school out there. And for myself, as a Comm Strat officer, we have a program at SDSU at the School of Journalism and Media Studies, and it's just known as the Public Affairs Master's Program for the Navy and Marine Corps. And so when my name came up and it was my time to go through that board, I submitted a letter and requested that as a Comm Strat officer, could I go to SDSU and get a master's degree? And so that's what I did, and I was really fortunate to be selected. And so then in 2023, I believe it was June, I show up to San Diego, and I go to SDSU and start a pretty rigorous summer session in the program. I think the best part about it was just the guys and gals that I was able to meet in the cohort. The vast majority of us were public affairs officers, but three guys in particular were the other Marines in the cohort, and we got really close over the year, and I learned a ton, but having them there working through the long nights and stuff together, I really appreciated that, and I'm gonna remember that for a long time.
That's wonderful. So there were Marines that are there were Marines that were part of this program, but most of them weren't Marines. They were just regular public affairs officers, or just public affairs folks?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the master's program at SDSU for like military public affairs officers, it's open to every branch. The year that I went through it, the vast majority of the folks in the cohort were from the Navy. And then only 4 of us were Marines. And then we had one young lady from the Coast Guard as well. So it's open to all branches, but we were definitely like one of the smallest groups. So we would, just like Marines do, we stuck together and we partnered up on our projects and stuff. And it made it very rewarding.
Yeah, sounds good. And how did that whole program, the whole master's program, set you up for your career afterwards?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Marine Comm Strat officers are, the way we're made is basically you commission in the Marine Corps and you go to what we call the basic school, which is in Quantico, Virginia, and that's your basic training as a Marine officer for like combat and leadership. And once you complete TBS, which is about 6 months, you select a job assignment, which we call military occupational specialty, or MOS. We compete for it. There's rankings that come out of the class and everything. And I was very fortunate to get CompStrat as my MOS. And so after that, then you go to the Defense Information School, which all the branches send their public affairs officers to, or their PR officers. And we get training, basic training on how to be a basically trained, skilled public relations professional in the military. And so I did that it was 2020. And then I got assigned to Marine Corps Base Hawaii, of all places, which I did not expect. I knew very little about the Marine Corps base out there, but I was very, very fortunate to get assigned Hawaii. And so I went and worked for the base commander there for 3.5 years. And so that's where kind of I cut my teeth on my career and got good at the real basics of public relations and strategic communication. And then as I was a kind of a senior first lieutenant, then the C Club board came around and I submitted for SDSU. And the reason I wanted to go was to further my development as a Comstrat officer. I wanted to become better at the trade, at the craft. And that was that's the program that the Navy Marine Corps is set up to do that. So going into the SDSU master's program, it's frankly awesome. It's 10 months. It starts out with a summer a session, which is fairly intense. You're working all day, every day, whether it's like in class or if you're going home and working on your homework. It's focused on the fundamentals of research and comm planning. So you go through the gauntlet of the whole RPI process. And so we did that for the summer. It lasted a couple weeks, and then we got probably a week off, and then we went into the normal semester. And then we were just normal grad students. So we had a schedule just like every other grad student, going to classes on whether it's case studies or PR theories, communication theories, or whether it's research or planning. And so, basically what I got out of CSU is what I wanted, which was a rigorous professional development in, what I do for a living, which is public relations for the Marine Corps. I thought it was pretty exceptional what I got out of it. And, I think it definitely has made me better at my job. The staff at SDSU is great. They walk you through whether it's theories or how to apply it in a practical manner to the profession. And I went in pretty green, and I came out hopefully a little bit more competent to do the job for the Marine Corps.
Yeah, certainly. And before you ever went to America's biggest, most vacation hotspots of Hawaii and the coastal vacation primes of San Diego and Hawaii, and before you kind of really evolved in this public affairs sphere and going through this program, before you ever even joined, did you have a passion for public affairs? Was it something you were interested in, or did you just get a lucky break?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I grew up wanting to be a Marine, first off. My father was Marine. My lullabies were like the Marine Corps hymn and, Navy blue and gold and stuff. So out of high school, I applied to and got, I feel lucky to have been accepted to SDSU, right? Out of high school, I got lucky enough to be accepted to the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. So I went, it's military college, right? It's the Navy Marine Corps military college, went there for 4 years. And my whole purpose for going there was to become a Marine Corps officer. Went through 4 years. It's an awesome program, develops you, really indoctrinates you and develops you as a future Navy Marine Corps officer. And then, again, was blessed enough to get Marine Corps, what I wanted. And then went to TBS and did the training there. I think that I don't think I ever went into any of that process looking to be a PAO at first. But what I did know is I believed in the organization. I believed in the Marine Corps and what its mission is. And Comstrat gets to share that with, the American people and the world. And that's what I think is so special about being a Comstrat officer. And so I was very fortunate to be selected as a Comstrat officer out of TBS. I think it's one of the best gigs in the Corps, and I wouldn't give it up for anything.
Yeah, sounds good. You've been in a couple positions, I assume, and you worked your way up the ranks in the public affairs sector. How has your job changed over time?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I gave you like kind of the abridged timeline of
Feel
kind of where
free.
I've been. Uh, so I actually finished my training and then went out to Hawaii during COVID. So my then training at the Defense Information School was delayed, and so I went out to the base as a untrained Comstrat officer. It was my assigned job, but I hadn't gotten the training yet, and so I worked on a great boss, then Captain Roberto Martins, and he took me under his wing and just showed me the down and dirty ropes of how you do public affairs in the military. And so during that time, I was doing you know, simplistic things like trying to improve internal communication within the organization, or just refining some of the external communication channels we had, just from a common sense point of view. Not really a public relations practitioner yet, but just from the perspective of someone who's coming in with a fresh perspective, and then I just shadowed him. um, and that was really beneficial to me. And then I went to do my training and became a full-fledged Comstrat officer. I had what we call the MOS, right? I earned it, and then I came back to Hawaii and they gave me the title of deputy director. Really, what that meant is, you know, my boss wanted me to help with everything, but kind of at his level down. And so I was very focused on the internal workings of the Comstrat team at the base, um, and managing the Marines, leading the Marines, and focusing on achieving the goals that the director set out for us. And that was helpful too, right? Because as you get higher in the ranks, or you have a different position, you tend to work for a boss, for the lead of an organization, or in my case, you work for a commander, and you're looking up and out, right? But having that experience of working down and in and leading a team to achieve tasks or goals or whatever it is on a daily basis was really great for my development. Um, and then, I believe it was 2022. So I'd been in Hawaii for about 2 years. I had done the deputy director role, focusing down in on the section, and then doing some other fun things like liaisoning with some TV shows, bringing them on the base, and doing filming and stuff like that. Doing some media engagement stuff, but definitely helping the director really achieve those things. I was fortunate enough to take over as the director for the Comstrat team on the base. So I grew into that role, and had that for about a year and a half. And, that was really important for my development because it's big shoes to fill. Um, Working for a base in the Marine Corps, you're focused on the domestic side of public affairs. And that is what's really most comparable to, I believe, private sector PR. Is you're working to breed understanding and support from maybe the community that surrounds your organization. For us, it's the installation, right? We're highly focused on communicating with and breeding understanding with the community. And so, that time I was doing, I think, 6 public speaking engagements a month, at different city councils. In Hawaii, they're called neighborhood boards, but that's because the whole island of Oahu is under the city and county of Honolulu. But here on the mainland, the most comparable, alternative, well, the most comparable version that would be like a small city council. So I would go and speak to those that surrounded different properties that the base owned on the base or on the island, and I don't think I'm a great public speaker, but I think I'm okay. And that really, getting thrown into an assignment like that really makes you learn. And so I did that, and worked for the base commander as the director. And so that's when I really started to do the sound counsel to leadership on matters of strategic communication. And so that was a professional challenge in itself. Um, Commanders have a wide breadth of responsibilities. And so they need trusted advisors to speak to them on different functional areas. And as Comstrat, we talk about the PR. We talk about the implications of actions, what that is going to be perceived as by external publics. And we, help to work to achieve the mission for the base while bringing understanding outside the base. And so yeah, that directorship in Hawaii was crucial to my development. And then I looked at SDSU as kind of the next step to really sharpen the skills and get better at research and planning and all the things that pros do, but maybe someone who's not a pro yet but wants to be needs to work at and develop. And SDSU is that vehicle for me.
Understood. And zooming a little in as we kind of get into more modern times, now that you're in the position you are now here in San Diego, what does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So after graduating from SDSU in May 2024. Okay, I was lucky enough to be assigned the Comstrat director billet at the 13th Marine Expeditionary Unit. So I don't work for the base Camp Pendleton, but I'm stationed on Camp Pendleton, and I work for the commander of the 13th MU. That's kind of the abbreviated name of our unit. And at that time, June 2024, the unit was actually deployed. They were out of the country in the Philippines doing some exercises. So I graduated. I had about a week to get my things packed and rearranged, and then I got on a plane and I met the 13th Marine Expeditionary Unit out in the Philippines to start doing the public affairs Comstrat work for exercises that the unit was conducting with the Armed Forces of the Philippines. And so that was my first real challenge of not doing domestic public affairs, but doing public affairs, in other countries with regional allies and partners. And that's really the key to military public affairs is that's the challenge, is doing that outside of the country. You're in a deployed environment. You're working out of tents. You're working with regional partners you never met before, and you're trying to breed understanding by the host nation audience of why the Marine Corps is there and why they're training with the Philippine Armed Forces. And so, I was immediately after graduation, I went out and did that. And that was, it was a challenge because it was something I'd never done before. I knew the theory of it. I knew how I would go about it, but I hadn't actually done it yet outside of the country. And so that was awesome. And then we came back. And so day to day at the MU, it's fairly straightforward. We're a deployable unit, but we're back in the United States. So we do training. And so the Comstrat team strategically communicates about the training that the MU conducts and tries to breed understanding of that with key publics. And then in September 2024, the 13th MU deployed for 6 months. So we filled a role known as Marine Rotational Force Southeast Asia. And what that is a deployment program out of Camp Pendleton run by the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force, where Marine Expeditionary Units who aren't necessarily deploying on ships at the time, they will go out to Southeast Asia and rotate through the region and do engagements and exercises with allies or partners. And so we did that for 6 months from September 2024 to March, I think it was the last day of March 2025 when we got back. Got to go to 6 countries, do I think 10 military exercises, worked with all the State Department and embassies out there. Worked with those those partner military public affairs teams to communicate about the exercises and the training and like what we get out of it as partner forces and what that means for not only the American people, but for the people of those countries. And so that's been a great experience too. That, we did that for 6 months with the MU, and I'm still here. I think I've been here for almost 2 years. And so much of that time has been outside of the country. But then when we're back home, we're just continuing to refine, our readiness, sharpen our skills. You grind your blade against the sharpening stone to get better at what you do. So we're always fairly busy. So we're always talking about, all that training we're doing as a MU. That's kind of the day to day.
Understood. So you're kind of almost a voice for this unit.
Yeah, 100%. So whether you're in another branch and we call you public affairs, whether you're in the Marine Corps and we call you Comstrat, you are the intermediary, the liaison, the spokesman for the military to the American people, or whatever key public that is that you're trying to reach. And so everything you see or hear or know about the Marine Corps, for the most part, that came from Comstrat officers. And so for my role at the 13th MU, it's kind of an honor when you think about it. Basically, if somebody knows about the 13th MU and they know what we've done, that was communicated by the Marines and my team, and it's super rewarding when you talk to people out in town, or you talk to your family, or you talk to people in the unit or senior leaders, or whatever the case may be, and they're talking about the 13th MU. You have at least a little bit of a hand in that, and so that's Comstrat's role for sure.
Yeah, so just being that outlet, being that bridge between the public and this unit, and obviously representing even the Marines as a whole. Would you say a lot of journalists might be listening in on this podcast? How would you say your relationship is with them? Because I know there might be a lot of PR people that might be interested in that.
Yeah, that's a great question. For being the Comstrat officer for a unit like the 13th MU, we deploy a lot. And so we're constantly working to establish relationships with reporters, whatever region we're in. In general, Comstrat officers, just like any other PR professional, we must, to be successful, we must build relationships with reporters and news outlets. The most important thing there is trust, right? You need to be a straight shooter. You need to be truthful. You need to be, people need to understand you and know that when you're speaking about something that it's factual and accurate and reasonable. We're working in Hawaii. I had a great relationship with a lot of reporters out there, and because I was at the base, I never moved. I wasn't deploying, and so I had a lot of enduring, long-term relationships with reporters at some of the news outlets in that state. That definitely helped the mission of the base, because when you build relationships with reporters, it breeds understanding, and frankly, it makes the conversations go a lot easier, because I'm not some number from the base that's calling. Oh, Mark's calling, and they've got a press release, or they've got a pitch, or there's something interesting going on that he's got something to say about, and that those relationships are invaluable. Now, in a deployed environment, when I'm going to country where I've never been before, or where my unit hasn't been in a couple of years, and we're rotating through to do some training, we lean heavily on the State Department and the embassies, because those are the resident Americans in that country that have built those relationships with media outlets and reporters. And on top of that, we lean heavily on the partner militaries, or the allied militaries. So, for instance, when I'm in the Philippines for an exercise, I'm working hand in hand with the Philippine Marine Corps public affairs officer, because he or she has those relationships built with those news outlets And so it just makes that coordination and the professional relationship much easier. You cut through all the flack, and you can talk about the issue at hand. And at the end of the day, relationships mean a ton. And if you're going to be effective, you got to build relationships, or you got to know somebody that has those relationships, so that you can get your message across the finish line.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of journalists that might be listening could very much relate to that relationship. The relationship that you should have with any PIO ever. Kind of looking into more of just the management of information aspect. How do you manage information that's coming out of the Marines, or any misinformation that might be coming from elsewhere?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you got to think about two things. Well, there's a couple things, especially for the military, because we're an interesting case. Not
Lots
only
of information.
do Yeah, there's a ton of information, right? Not only do I want to talk about the Marine Corps story, or the 13th Muse story. Not only do I want to be actively, engaged and share it, I'm required to. There's an interesting aspect about the United States military, that we are absolutely required to actively share to the American people what we're doing. Um, and that means that there's always work to do, which is good. It's good to be busy. Having busy hands develops you as an individual, but it means you're not bored. Um, and at the same time, you do have to have discernment, because we're always doing things. We're always doing exercises. We're always preparing, because we pride ourselves on being ready. But I think it's not necessarily discerning what we should and shouldn't say, or what we do share and what we don't share. I think it's being effective in how we share it. And so understanding, what things are interesting to what audiences, and what tactics are best to share a specific piece of information is important. If it's an everyday, if it's an everyday training that isn't necessarily going to be thought of as news, but we still want to let the American people know we're doing it. That looks like owned communication channels, just like any other organization, right? But when it's something that we know is of heightened importance or of heightened interest, that's when we start to execute that traditional media engagement stuff, and looking to pitch reporters, and talk about it on a larger scale. Especially if we're doing something new, right? If we're doing something that's not known before, or the American people don't know about it because it's a developing thing, then that's something we're going to go try to do a full court press, and get as wide dissemination as possible. Because one, as a PR professional, kind of that's what you do, right? Okay, this is news. Let's talk about it. But at the same time, we're in that way, we also live up to the expectations, which is informing the American people about the Marine Corps in our operations. I think on your question about disinformation, I dealt with that a lot more at the base, because, like I said, our public communication is very much more domestic focused at bases. We're not deploying and stuff. I don't think really I don't think really we're looking domestically to. We are, of course, looking to fight disinformation, but really we want to provide clarity. We want to be as truthful and as accurate as possible. And in that way, if there is disinformation out there, we want to provide an accurate and effective communication product to inform everybody of what actually is going on. And so if we are accurate and if we are effective, then we can, at the same time, combat whatever misinformation is there. In a deployed environment, when we're talking about military training and operations, that becomes more interesting. simply because we're on a global scale with different actors. I would say that the cornerstone of public affairs or ComStrat is grounded in truth and accuracy. And so, in that same vein, we we try to stay aware of and abreast of any misinformation that might be out there. But our goal is to ensure that we effectively communicate the truth and what's taking place. And if we do that well enough, if we are competent enough, that is how you effectively combat things, is you let people know what's going on, what's the reality, and you go from there.
Yeah, and can you speak a little bit on what these trainings look like? What do you usually talk about?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. I'll make this quick, but it's important to tell people what the MU is, right? So the 13th Marine Expeditionary Unit. We're known as the Fighting 13th, and we are a Marine unit that specializes in deploying aboard Navy ships. So, the old school traditional Marine soldiers from the sea, we embody that as a Marine Expeditionary Unit. We just composited in March, and what that means is we formed a full unit. So we went from about 200 or so people to 2,000. We have a squadron of Marine aircraft. We've got attack helicopters, heavy lift helicopters that are the most powerful in the free world, that can lift massive objects and move people around. And we've got the awesome MV-22 Osprey, which is that double rotor helicopter, that tilts and turns into an aircraft that everybody knows about. And then we've got our Marine Infantry Battalion, which is known as the Battalion Landing Team. So we've got our infantry Marines. They've got an artillery battery with some, armored vehicles. And then we've got our logistics Marines, who have got the trucks and the explosive ordnance disposal Marines and things like that. And that package is what we put on 3 Navy ships, and we go out into regions around the world and provide the American people and our national leadership a force that is ready to operate now. And they're in critical regions around the world, right? We just provide a solution that is close to a problem. So that's what the MU does. So the training that we do complements that. So right now the 13th MU is doing training here domestically ashore. Just last week we did what's known as a TRAP course, which is a tactical recovery of aircraft and personnel, where Marines are on ready alert. They get on aircraft and they go into a notional contested environment, and they recover personnel or equipment. We also did raids courses last week, where we had Marines getting on aircraft and flying into an objective and raiding that objective, whether it's for a high value target or critical information, or simply just to take the objective itself. So the MU itself does everything from crisis response. So if a typhoon hits a country and we're in the region, we can get ordered to go to that country and help them. We fly in humanitarian aid materials, food, water, whatever the case may be. And on the other end of the spectrum, we're a warfighting organization. So the MU, if there's a problem in a region, the MU gets told to go there, and we're ready to fight because we're Marines. And so it's this really awesome Swiss Army knife of a unit that the United States has to just, problem arises, they can just throw a MU at it, and they know that they've got a solution kind of ready to go. So we're always training to that end. We always want to be as proficient, as ready as possible, and that's what we're doing right now is making sure we're ready.
Understood. Yeah. So you're a fighting unit. You're right there in front of the action, probably, and things are constantly happening, especially now when it comes to relaying information about a crisis, what are the objectives there? Is it usually, soothing people's worries? Maybe that's not the best way to take about it. Soothing people's worries, or is it more about combating misinformation, like I was saying earlier, or just being upfront and honest?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it depends on what crisis you're talking about. Let's say, for instance, we're talking about a humanitarian assistance mission. At the ground level, we coordinate with the host country and the State Department to deliver whatever goods that we're talking about, whatever humanitarian assistance is needed. And then really we rely on that host nation country with their established communication channels to deliver that information to the people that need to receive that aid. But, behind the scenes, I would be the public affairs counterpart. And so we would be coordinating closely to make sure that that information that they were sharing through their channels is accurate and effective. And so, in this job, you're not always the talking head. The information is not always going to be attributable to you, but behind the scenes, there's still like this professional level of relationship that you have to apply to make sure that they are prepared to be successful in their communication to whatever key public it is. And in this case, right, it would be the people who need that aid. And so you're working to coordinate with them, make sure that they understand what we're doing as a Marine Corps to support them, right? Making sure what they're passing is accurate. And then they would execute that communication to share with the key public, the folks that need that aid. Yeah, other crisis, the misinformation is always a concern, and we're always looking for it. But at the end of the day, the way you combat misinformation is you communicate the truth effectively. And so what we need to do is we need to become professionals at communicating effectively to combat any misinformation that we see in the information environment.
Yeah, understood. I mean, you're talking about it now. Humongous unit. You're talking about a lot of people that are constantly on the front lines, constantly training. You're saying in that sense, especially now and how your job looks like. How has SDSU's master program has it given you these vital tools? What kind of, I guess, outlook has it might have given you on this position, or any kind of tool otherwise that you wouldn't have had?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's important that we bring it back to SDSU because, man, go Aztecs. I love that place. Yeah, I think the program, the biggest thing I got out of it was the ability to not just, the Marine Corps is big on planning. We have our planning processes. We do it rapidly. We're very good at operational planning, but as a combat officer, you need to be good at doing informed planning. You need to understand the information environment and the problem set that you're dealing with. SDSU developed me significantly in my ability to conduct research, whether it's quantitative or qualitative. It helped me understand the problem so that I could write communication goals and then execute communication strategies and tactics to achieve those goals and solve the problem. And that process, you might have to write a comp plan quickly. You might have all the time in the world, but at the very least, you have to do a basic level of research to understand the environment and understand the problem set so that you can communicate effectively and just achieve what you're trying to achieve. That's really what SDSU, the master's program, it taught me was the ability to research and then plan on that research, and just makes you a better professional. What you don't want to do is you don't want to write this shiny plan that sounds good. You got the slide deck you built on Canva and it looks really nice, but you're just shouting into the wind because you're totally off on your assumptions. It's not effective. And so the grad school program really helped me with my research and understanding how to figure out what the problem actually is, or what opportunity is there to then take advantage of it and communicate effectively.
You were saying earlier that it gave you, the information to deal with situations you've never been a part of, like deployment. It gave you the tools to just tackle and start to begin the process of properly just doing your job.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, I think, and some folks might disagree with me on this. It's interesting. So when we do exercises with our allies, many of those have been established for years. We've been doing it for a long time. Some of them are new, but you have, these are ongoing relationships between countries, and so you have case studies to look at to better understand. Okay, what am I going into here? If I'm going to an exercise in said country, if we've done this before, what were the communication plans executed there? What were the results? How did people react to the training? What were the salient topics that they understood from the training, and did those actually align with our communication, key messages and themes, right? Did it actually reach them? Did they actually understand what we were doing, or was it just this named training that they didn't understand? And so that research process that I learned at SDSU helped me lean into these exercises that we execute as a unit, as the 13th MU, and go look at previous iterations, check out what the understanding is among the populace, if I can get a hold of data for that. And if not, what's just on a broad scale, what's their sentiment towards the Marine Corps and the military in general? And then how well did the communication on the last iteration work? Was it effective? Doing that content analysis and things like that. And then, if you have a good research base like that, writing a communication plan for an exercise is fairly simple. You know what you're going to do, so you know what you need to communicate. And if you have an understanding of how it went last time, or your key publics, what their feelings towards certain issues are, or certain topics, it allows you to develop strategies and tactics that are effective. Draft your messaging tailored to people so they understand it, right? That's always the goal. Is you're not necessarily looking to trick people, because that's not truthful. But what you do want to do is tailor your messaging and what you're saying to people so that they can understand it. And yeah, all that, I'm definitely not the best at it. But my ability to do it is definitely it's a product of the SDSU grad program. It made me a better comms officer, that's for sure.
Wonderful to hear. And as we kind of wrap up this episode, I always ask the same few questions. One of them being, is there anything that we didn't cover in your career that you'd want to kind of shine a light on? I know, hard
No,
question.
you've let me just kind of run with it. I can blab for a long time. I've had a really blessed career. I've been probably in the best two duty stations the Marine Corps has to offer. I was out in Hawaii and then San Diego, America's finest city. You can't get better than that. Yeah, I think SDSU. I really appreciated it because it was a change of pace. I was able to focus on my professional development. I had Eric, Nick, and Johnny, the other Marines in my cohort, there to, we just had a fantastic time. At this point, I've deployed to numerous countries. I've done traditional media engagement, community relations, crisis communication. I've prepped leaders for interviews. I've done press conferences, big and small, all those things. But my time at SDSU is something that I kind of feel was special, just because of it's just an awesome place to be, and I really appreciated the program. I would give two pieces of advice though to people that go to SDSU. Maybe you're an undergrad, or maybe you know about the grad school program. if you want to go into public relations and you're at SDSU, you've got two pieces of advice. One, and this is a specific one, if you want to go be whether it's like a military public affairs officer or maybe a public information officer for a government agency or something like that, you should absolutely take HSEC 603. I believe it was emergency preparedness and response. Okay. And this is outside of the any of the classes for the degree, but what it was is a class in an EOC, which is an emergency operations center, responding to a crisis. And like in the Marine Corps, we do combat operations centers all the time. So you're in a room with other people, other functional areas, and you're having to quickly adjust to scenarios. And as the combat officer, strategically communicate what's going on. On the flip side, in a government agency, you are the PIO having to speak to whether you work for a city or a state or whatever it is, you got to communicate that stuff. And it wasn't a PR class, it wasn't a marketing class, but it was a really great rep of working in an EOC. And so if you want to go work for a government agency, I would definitely recommend taking that class because it just makes you understand what the heck that looks like in execution. And yeah, I had a great time. It was like the one class that I took outside of the master's program. And I loved it. It reminded me of being in the Marine Corps a little bit. The other piece of advice I would give is if you're going to do PR, and just in a general sense, if you're going to do PR, do it for an organization or a business or a cause you actually care about and you actually believe in. Because at the end of the day, you are going to go and be the spokesman for that thing and shouting from the rooftops and telling everybody the good news about it. And if you don't believe in it, that's difficult. Or at least it's not easy. And, for me, I believe in the Marine Corps. I believe in our mission. And, I appreciate my lot in life and what I get to do. And so it makes being a combat officer much easier because, I can confidently go and talk about the 13th MU and I actually believe what I'm saying. So just a piece of advice, if you're going to do this type of work, think long and hard about who you're going to do it for. Because believing in it makes it easier.
I think that is some fantastic advice. Just one last question, which is, you shouted out a couple people, maybe it's the same answer, but is there anyone in the JMS program or, anyone who is alongside of you that you think would be a great person for this podcast?
Oh, that's so hard. Yeah, there's a bunch of people. Yeah, I think John, Eric, and Nick might get on to me if I recommend them because they're oh, come on, man, you're gonna make me do that. No, I think that they would be great. Our lead professor, Professor Kay Sweetser, led the cohort. She was a reservist, captain in the Navy, public affairs officer. She was exceptional. I don't know if you guys have brought on professors in the past.
Sometimes, yeah.
But I think that she'd be awesome. She was critical in the program, led during my time, led it all, and developed us as professionals. Dave Oates is there now, leading it. I know he's got a big role in the program. And so I think he'd be a great guest to bring on. Both of those individuals are skilled at what they do, and they're pros, and they're great people too. And they'd be great to have a conversation with.
Sweet. Well, maybe I'll be lucky to talk to them.
Yeah.
I appreciate you chatting with me today. I appreciate you having on. As always, it's great to talk to folks like you, especially in the more public affairs sector of journalism studies and media studies. And it's fantastic to learn from you. I appreciate you having time to talk to us today.
Yeah, Rami, thanks for having me on, man. When you asked me to do this, I was kind of surprised, and I had to sit down and think about man, what happened at SDSU? Because it feels like a long time ago, given the deployments and stuff like that. But it's been great to sit down and talk about it. I think it's a great program, and I would recommend it to anybody. And it was fun kind of reliving it in my head and then talking to you about it now.
Sweet. I'm glad I could, take this walk on memory lane with you. I just appreciate you having on and thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot. Had a lot of fun.
You too.
Thanks for listening to the Where Ya At podcast. This is Devin Watley from the class of 2021. Thanks to Martine Marine for creating the music you're hearing right now, and Alex Piscatelli for her work on the podcast name and artwork on social media. And a reminder to SDSU alums, we really want to know where you're at. Tell us about your career. Get involved in the school. There's many ways you can do this, from donating your time or money, mentoring students, to even speaking in classrooms in person or on Zoom. Your work can help us grow the program and create more opportunities for our students to succeed. Again, thanks for listening. Subscribe to this podcast. Tell your friends. Recommend us a future guest. And go Aztecs.